Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. All right. So now I've lost my screen there. So this was, if you recall, this was the text that sort of opened up the discussion. Pilate asked Jesus, "So you are king?" And Jesus answered, "You say I'm a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." And Pilate's question to him is, what is truth? Pilate's question is absolutely critical, of course. To me, in some ways, it can be read as a literary setup to the focus of John's gospel and Jesus' own words about truth. You want to know the truth, the whole truth about God, listen to Jesus. And if you do, the truth will make you free. But Jesus never really defines the truth. At least in John's gospel, it's a little bit, he talks about being the truth, and asking us to follow the truth. And yet he doesn't define it. And he doesn't argue with Pilate. He doesn't say, "Pilate, here's my answer to the truth." So I think it's partly left as a question for us to wrestle with. And it seems simple, but it can be very complicated in our world as we try to think about truth and how power intersects with that as well. So I'm only going to do about 10 minutes here, just reminding us where we were. So that some of the questions, we looked at a question like, what is true and how do we know? We spent quite a bit of time on that. What is the relationship between truth and power? We touched on that, and we're going to touch on that a little bit more. And then finally get to what truths are most powerful in your own life. Another thing we talked about was post-truth, that we live in a post-truth time when the facts are not as important as your feelings about the situation. So I believe, therefore I'm right. That is a tenet of post-truth. And we looked at this text from Yuval Harari, who said, as a species, humans prefer power to truth. We spend far more time and effort on trying to control the world than on trying to understand it. And I think what Harari is talking about here is the power of control, or the desire to control, versus seeking understanding in relationships. We looked at this quote also, which follows from Harari. This is from McIntyre's book. In our current political environment, truth is being challenged as a mechanism for asserting political dominance. In other words, truth is one of the first casualties in the establishment of an authoritarian state, for instance. And then we looked at several different ways that post-truth manifests itself in our lives. Through intentional science denial, we talked about cognitive bias, where we avoid psychic discomfort. We want to believe what we need to believe. It's important to us to do that. We talked about the decline of traditional media. We didn't talk about Truth Social, but Truth Social to me is an ironic name, but a perfect example of how truth can be twisted in the name of power, or looking powerful, or looking powerful by demeaning, belittling, threatening. This past week, I don't know about you, but I'll just speak for myself. I was really ill, sickened by the comments of our president on Truth Social, talking about bombing Iran back to the Stone Age, or threatening to destroy a whole civilization. That's not America in my mind, and it's certainly not Christian. Unless you want to go back into some darker times in history, I would agree that Christians were not always not dark or trying to play the power game. Many terrible things have happened in the name of the church. So this is where we were and was what we talked about. We're going to come back to some of those topics, but I want to start with a couple of questions for you right now. Maybe this is the law rather than the gospel. We'll see. This is for you in your groups, and we'll take a fair amount of time for you to discuss. And I hope one of the ground rules here would be that you try to let everybody talk if they want to. Nobody has to speak, but speak as much as you want. And then at the end, we're going to ask for groups if anybody wants to share some highlights, and we'll have the microphone for that. So as you think about the problem of untruth in our world, what bothers, angers, or confuses you the most? Second question, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 equaling not hopeful at all, how hopeful are you that truth will prevail in our world? 2 questions to ponder about truth and power. And I'm going to give you at least 10 minutes to talk about these in your groups. Go for it.
Well, that was. For some reason. You know, those are the facts. That's my story. That's so great. Well, our ability to do that. Very, very strong pressure. Right.
And I think.
Pretty much. You know, he's like, honestly, and that was that big. I think, I felt like it's normally, yeah, you know. My mother. Still at it. That's. Yes.
Susan, don't do that. You want, where would you like? You want to sit here? We have.
I know our. And I walked down the line for the town meeting.
We'll take about one more minute. I know some people just came in, so speak fast.
But I have. Not in my, I have to sit in
Harold needs to be out.
Yeah. I know.
Marshalling every student. That's
Hey, it's the only way. So we're looking at these two questions and it sounds like you've had some good discussion. What we'd like to do is capture some of the wisdom of the group. So if there's anybody that's willing to share a highlight from your group on either of these questions, I'll bring the microphone to you so everybody can hear. Anyone want to be brave? Begin.
There's so much, Scott.
Anybody want more donuts? Donut hole.
I guess I could talk for our group a little bit. Some of the things that came out of our group, the bother is angers and confusion were how some of what's going on is dividing families. There was a lot of concern about that because I think we all know people in our families and former churches and things that it's difficult even to be around them anymore. And so that's one of the dangers we're seeing.
That's somebody else.
I think one of the things that we talked about was how angry and confused we are by how many people don't really seem to care about truth. That they just believe what they want to believe or what one person tells them they should believe, and they're not really, from our point of view, not really seeking to see what truth really is.
Maisie is pointing to my spouse.
Well, I don't know, we're all in agreement over here.
What did we agree on?
Huh?
What did we agree on?
Well, that we don't have a really high number for the second one.
Right.
I said 5, but then we talked about 3 might be better. It's hard to be hopeful right now, and as I said, once our president is gone, that doesn't mean everything's gonna be fine again. There's a lot of people out there that would like to take his place. So I guess we're kind of a negative group over here, sorry.
I call it realistic.
Oh, realistic.
No apologies necessary. Anybody else?
We talked about in the short term. In the short term, it might be a very low number, but in the long term, we felt a bit more hopeful. And then when Susan joined, she said, give me your quote, remember the justice one?
I said that old saying about the arc of history leads towards justice, which I hope is true. It seems like it is.
Back when it was said, I think it was.
This group, you wanna,
I would think we have a lot, well, some.
we have the time?
I'll accept that. Our group felt that the United States may not get to question 2, but eventually. I think we have to believe that the truth will eventually win out. We may not be around for it, as a country even, I mean,
May not live to see the, what Luther King said.
yeah.
I was just reminded by Steve of something we heard yesterday at the process meeting with leader Paul Sponheim, and he wisely commented toward the end about love is patient. Love is patient, and I'm reminding us about patience as well as immediate angers and frustrations which separate us. I'm saying this for myself, separate rather than driving toward hopefulness. But patience, I know it's hard for me.
Well, I was just gonna say, I thought we had a really good discussion here, but I was reminded that when I was in high school, I had a civics and history teacher named Ted Nemzik. I really loved that guy. He was trying to teach us to do critical thinking. It seems that's going out the window right now. And that what really scares me is that we don't, not we, but I mean, many people do not think about why they believe what they believe or why they think what they think. And I remember Ted Nemzik would put a paragraph or a sentence or two in front of us, and then he would ask us to defend or tell why we think it's true or why we think it's not true. Give reasons for it. So, very helpful.
Anybody else? Lots of good feedback, and I'm sure there was much more than that. This is a quote that we did look at last time. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about it. So I wanted to just come back to this because this quote, I think, is very important as we think about the intersection of power and truth. And this is another quote from Harari who says, "Truth and power can travel together only so far. Sooner or later, they go their separate ways. If you want power, at some point, you'll have to spread fictions. If you want to know the truth about the world, at some point, you'll have to renounce power." We got a couple of comments about that, but I think it's worth us having some conversation in the group for about 5 minutes. What's your reaction to this quote? Do you agree or disagree with the premise that he's saying here? If you want power, at some point, you'll have to spread fictions. If you want to know the truth about the world, at some point, you will have to renounce power. Talk about, what is your reaction to that quote? Do you agree or disagree with that?
I spot on.
Someone's that. Feel like after that.
Yeah, I know that's someone like human kind.
Yeah, all of it, all right. But it. But they do. Write a Bible.
You know, we don't want to spend
There's a lot that got in there. I just have so much better. Yeah. A lot of that. Yeah, I.
Now I'm confused.
What I'm tolerant.
Supposedly, the power of the Roman Empire.
They're unusual. Mark Kelly?
But there are gems that are now saying Americans. And that's.
Okay, I'm moving forward. Carol is dinging the bell. Ding, 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 ding. Obviously, all of these questions we can probably spend all day on. I think they're all. They're hitting us in the gut. They're powerful. But would anyone like to comment about this particular quote?
Well, I think our consensus in our group was that kind of disagreed or could agree depending on what you define as power. If you look at power based on greed and corruption, we could agree with that statement. But if you went with power as being the power of love, well, then we can disagree with that statement. The Roman Empire fell, but Christianity survived. So it shows you the long term that maybe power is better. So we're kind of, slightly against the statement, I guess.
Thank you. I was hoping somebody would actually go there, so. She always dominates. She has the power.
I have the power.
She has the power. I would agree with that.
No, the first thing that came to my mind was the person who has power and truth is the Pope right now. He has a lot of power and he's speaking the truth. And then we talked about, well, Carney in Canada, and we talked about the president in Mexico, that these are people with a lot of power, but they're also fed up. And they're speaking their truth.
Yeah.
So that's what we were thinking.
Yeah, good example.
Any other comments on this?
To piggyback on what David said, one of the things that was proposed was changing the word power throughout this sentence. And if we change it to coercion or domination, obviously that statement is very truthful.
Yeah.
Greed was another. But if we change it to love, is love powerful?
Yeah.
And
Are you asking?
do we have? Yes, I think looking at love as having a certain degree of power, then I would disagree with that statement.
Sure.
But anyway, that's.
Yeah, and I do think that, I think that he is talking about coercive power or power as the world would define power. Yes, yeah, so this is good. It's a good transition, actually, to talking about getting back to what Jesus was saying about power. If you continue in my word, you're free to be my disciples. You know the truth, and truth will make you free. I'm the way, the truth, and the life, etc. I was born for this. Everyone who belongs to the truth belongs, listens to my voice. So when you think about Jesus, what he's talking about here, I wanted to ask the question, what is the truth that Jesus is calling us to believe or follow? Since he doesn't actually define it in John's gospel, he just says that he is, and that it's the thing you want to do. But what is the truth that Jesus is calling us to? And what is most true about power and his message? We'll take a few minutes to talk about that in the group too. And Susan, I'll call on you first when we get there. Since you had your hand up. Okay, about 5 minutes and we'll talk about this.
Back.
Yeah.
Power thinking.
God has a plan, said he flooded the earth. God had a plan once, he didn't like the way it went. He said, I'll never do that. Maybe he'll let us relationship. And then he'll start. You're right.
Until the cigarette. And this is even before.
Die for it.
Comes from. And that's all hard, the actual violence.
Struck by the phrase and that left her to the person.
He might have been right.
Well.
But it's also.
Okay, I apologize for interrupting again. We still only have a couple more questions, but I wanted to get a little feedback on this one. I was hearing some really good sermons as I was walking around.
Wait, what?
What is Jesus saying? But Susan, you wanted to say something.
No, the thing that was popping in my mind was that whole idea of servant leadership. That we, we hear about that and the kind of servant leadership is a different kind of a power, but to me, it's more a Jesus type of leadership.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to preach their sermon?
One of the things we came up with is if you wanted to know what Jesus says and listen to my voice, it's in the 2 commandments. To love Jesus with all your heart, with all your soul. Mind is the second step. Love your neighbor as yourself. And that's the truth you have to work from. That's the basis.
Okay, a core truth. Yeah. Errol. Watch out for the feedback there. You might want to stand up and.
I was thinking,
You called it, I called it.
I was thinking about, our Micah quote of, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God, that takes care of how we love God's mercy for us and how we share it with others through our work on justice and whatnot. How we live out the love of God. And then there's that crucial humility, walking humbly with God so that our personal ego and wish for control doesn't get in the way.
Which sounds to me like servant leadership.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Jesus isn't saying, truth is this laundry list of things that you need to do or you need to believe. Jesus is saying, look at me, I am the truth. I'm a reflection of the truth. This is where to look for the truth. Look at me.
Very good. I think Pastor Steve was preaching that sermon up there in that small group. Did you overhear him? Anybody else?
He wants to continue.
Yeah.
I think, we asked the question, is the Bible true? Well, if you fact check the Bible, no. It doesn't have all the facts straight. But is it true in guiding us to a relationship with God? And that in Christ is truth.
Good sermons. Just a couple more things. We didn't really get to solutions, but maybe you're already speaking the solutions in your responses to that last question. But some of the things that I thought about, how do we deal with truth? So I'm just going to run through these very fast. Seek truth through thoughtful reflection that sparks curiosity and imagination about the world, our neighbors, and about God. Oh, we did two. Okay. Encourage truth seeking and truth telling in all aspects of our lives. Smoke out deliberate attempts to mislead or create false narratives, which is very difficult when you talk about families disagreeing and so on. We talked a little bit about that last time. Tony had an example of that. Provide platforms for debate that take care not to give equal time to lies or falsehoods that injure, mislead, or subvert justice. Sometimes media, we talked about last time, media will try to be so even-handed that they allow some falsehoods to creep in just so they can be fair. And finally, proclaim, define, defend, elucidate truths that support a life-giving message that embraces moral obligation and moral imagination. And we'll do this together. Is there anything else you would add to this list? These are general things, but.
I would say it's important in trying to come to the truth with another person to focus on stories. What's their story? What is it in their background, in their life that led them to that belief? And learning the story and telling your story builds a relationship that kind of goes deeper than the words that you're sharing back and forth.
Anybody else want to comment on this? Add anything? We're moving a little quickly here, but I wanted to return to this quote, and I don't think we'll take time to discuss this, but this quote, from Robert Mesley in his book on process theology and the role of Christianity in an untruth world, post-truth world. Just want to read this again. He says it's to see and feel our personal relatedness to all creatures and the moral obligation and challenges that relatedness calls forth. We're called to care for the common good, to work intelligently and lovingly for social and economic justice. Micah would be proud of that. Religious teaching and practices that nurture harmony rather than hatred, and political structures that empower rather than coerce or impoverish. I thought it was worth coming back to that as a kind of a summary thought about power and the role of Christians. So, one last question. I'm almost there.
You click twice.
I know. I skipped one. I skipped the bottom of the other.
Oh.
Thank you for keeping me aware of my surroundings. David does that. Last questions. If Pilate were to ask you what is truth, what would you say? Name a powerful truth that guides your life. Sometimes you can go online, you can see these lists of truths and things. We don't have to go that there, but you can answer either one of these as you talk together, and we'll just take about 5 minutes and then get some final thoughts.
How do you separate belief and truth?
What?
In answering that.
Okay, we're going to talk it in the groups, and then I'll come back to anybody who wants to respond. That's okay.
We have time.
Application of something other years ago, that's a around circulating. Truth is.
Oh, yes, yes.
Child is right now.
I was thinking about myself when I said, I show myself.
And they made progress because that block energy.
Yeah,
there is. Always.
Is part of his writing talking about the fact that God does have a plan.
We need an amendment.
So we can do a lot of things about it. The other thing I could bring, 70 years old, that all the televangelists on TV, you were thinking out in California. That was based on charismatic.
Which has a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it has.
That's kind of the truth that guys don't know. That eventually. Oh,
But, you know, whatever. And, I don't, it's the same thing.
Civil War.
Why is it, yeah, why is they under? They're probably. The Artemis, because I'm. Postcards just fine.
Hey, we're almost at the end of our time, but I wanna to get a little bit more wisdom from the group, because this is a wise group. Anybody care to share what they would say to Pilate, or a truth that guides your life? Anyone?
That sounds too simple, I suppose, but if I were Pilate in front of me, at first I'd be afraid. And if I had my wits about me, I think I might say, he said, what is truth? I would say, I hope I would say, well, the truth is you are not God and I am not God. God is God and God is love.
Amen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? You can follow that. It's
It wasn't that profound.
good though. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, what's the topic?
Yeah.
Thought it was Gary's fingers.
Yeah, I had that trouble with my hearing aids recently.
So like that, we're discussing that, what's
It's,
happening.
it's not this, I don't
It's coming to the
think.
speaker.
Yeah, it's
But-
through the speakers.
I mean, turn.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, when you turn that off, it stops, so when I turn it down here, it stops. So it had something to do with.
Thank you.
Don't know what the,
We don't care.
yay, okay. Well, you
You were on.
Yeah, we're on.
Yeah.
on?
Uh-huh.
Is it on? Oh, okay. Anybody else like to offer?
I really appreciate what Gene shared about what Paul Sponheim shared yesterday. When I kind of go back to that when I think of a powerful truth about the gift of patience. And that in 1 Corinthians 13, that's one of the characteristics Paul really points to about the patience of love. Because I mean, how do we, it's like that helps me. That patience, I think, is the key, because how do we get through these cycles that we go through?
I suppose there are some people that would say, if you're too patient, we're not gonna
Act.
we're not gonna act, but no, I'm with you there. Anyone else? This is the last word right now.
Well, I was saying that, okay, you can say, God is love or whatever, but then you have to define what love is. And if you think of a dictator or someone, they're gonna define it different way than you are. Or I said, God is the giver of life, the abundant life. Well, someone can define that quite different way. And so it's very hard to come up with a simplistic answer to what is truth, but just say, oh, God is love. I mean, we can live with that because we understand what we mean. But someone else may not understand. And I was saying to Scott, you know, that's the problem with our creeds. We jump from birth to death to resurrection, and we never talk about what Jesus did. If Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, how did he treat people? How did he get people to treat one another? And none of that's in the creeds. You know, it's, anyway.
Well, I think we've come to the end of our time. My prayer for you is that you will all find truth. Which is obviously a fleeting issue, isn't it? We've talked about it twice. We could probably keep talking about it further, but this has been helpful for me to hear your wisdom about this. So thank you. Thanks.
I hope you enjoy the music at second service.